Abbott has gone forward with Stewart to the right, Lineker and Howes to the left. Is Gascoigne going to have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, I say! Brilliant! That is schoolboy's own stuff. Oh, I bet even he can't believe it. Is there anything left from this man to surprise us? That was one of the finest free kicks that this stadium...
Hello and welcome to episode 63 of Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Okay, Geoff, let's get going. Your trivia question for today.
In January 1986, Mark Hateley and Ray Wilkins played together for England. Why was that a first? And as a subsequent question to that, if you get it, what's the latest time and which two players were involved when that happened last time?
All right, very exciting stuff. We'll get to that at the end of the show. First of all, another exciting week of football. Let's start with the games at the weekend. Brighton 1, Liverpool 1. Brighton probably deserved the point, I think, really.
I think so. There's an argument that they maybe deserved more than that, but there were the disallowed goals and the usual VAR controversy, and I think Klopp has a point, but he's not helping himself at the moment, complaining so much about the number of games his team's been playing. He's been making the same complaint for the last 5 years. There comes a point where we're a bit tired of hearing about it, and why are the authorities at his club, the owners, not doing something about it?
Yeah, because the point being that he had a European game on the Wednesday and then was the first game on Saturday morning at 12:30 UK time. Frank Lampard, the Chelsea manager, had complained for the same reason the previous week. I mean, they won their 12:30 kick-off, but I don't think that's the point. Both managers saying it's, you can't rotate players like that. And Klopp also adding that he hasn't got any players to rotate. He's got so many injuries. We all think, well, what difference does it make 12:30 or 3 o'clock? But if you're away from home, you've got to get up a bit. It's always preparing for the game beforehand. The players need to have a relaxed breakfast, a lie-in, all that kind of thing. And those few hours or one day would make a big difference. Do you think he's right?
I think he's 100% right in what he's saying. I mean, it was a stupid decision, and it was, I believe it was a BT game, and they chose to put Liverpool on then. It was their complete choice, as Klopp said. But the owners of Liverpool have got to take a stand here. It's no good the manager talking about it afterwards. The owner has got to speak up, and they've got to try and get some sense with the broadcasting companies, because of course the broadcasting companies don't want the inverted commas boring match 12:30 because nobody's going to watch it.
Which is why, I mean, the other people who had, I thought, some room to complain were Crystal Palace, who played on Monday and then with the first game on the Friday night. You would think if you'd played Monday, your fixture would be on the Saturday at the earliest.
Yeah, there is no sensible argument against doing what they do in American football, where the matches are done in a rotation that everybody knows about from the start of the season. So you don't, if you play the Monday match, then you don't play the Thursday match. You play on a Sunday, and we should be doing exactly the same. If you played on a Monday match, then you play on a Sunday. Then the following week, play on a Saturday, and just do it in rotation. It's a simple thing to do. But the TV companies don't want to do it because that means they'll get the unfashionable matches when they don't want them.
Yes, and that's why you had Chelsea at 12:30. And then Liverpool at 12:30, because two big teams who do look like they're going to be battling it out for first place. Was that 1-1 draw indicative of what Klopp was saying, or do you just think Brighton were quite good?
Well, I think Brighton were quite good, and they've been good all season. They've just struggled to score the goals. And we've been saying on here that as soon as they start, if they start scoring goals, they're going to be fine. And they showed that against Liverpool. I mean, the injury problems that Liverpool have are quite extreme. He can't put out anything remotely resembling his first team at the moment. It's a serious problem.
Brighton getting a deserved draw against Liverpool. Are Liverpool the same team they were last season, or are we seeing these results because of these injuries? And does that let in other teams into the top four to compete with them?
I think they're the same team. No two seasons are ever exactly the same, but those injuries are making a huge difference to it. You can't ignore that. I still think they'll win the league, but it's going to be harder. I don't think we'll see 95 points, maybe 85 points will win the league this season.
All right, it's still all to play for, as they say. One of those contenders is Manchester City, who absolutely thumped Burnley 5-0. What was interesting, first of all, they found their not only winning ways but scoring ways again, and looked very good doing it. But Pep Guardiola, the Man City manager, said afterwards the fun has gone out of football with the COVID and all this stuff that's going on. He said it's just not any fun anymore. doing it this way. He said, you turn up, you play the football, you pack up and you go home. He said there's no fans to celebrate with, there's no atmosphere, there's no feeling of doing this for a reason. Quite a sort of sad thing for him to say, but I kind of get it.
Yeah, I think he's 100% right. And add into that the lottery of VAR, where players do something, the brilliant through ball to a player pointing and then fantastic goal, and it hauled back because his finger was ahead of the... VAR is killing the game as well.
Yeah, I think he probably was talking about as a whole, the game is no fun anymore, not just the fan lockout, but VAR. We're going to talk about that because that's featured quite heavily in some of these games. Everton got beaten at home by Leeds. This is Everton, who had a flying, first 5 games and now lost 4, something like that. And beaten by Leeds, who leak goals. They're an exciting team to watch, but they leak goals. Is that the end? Have we seen the end of Everton's challenge to a top 7 finish now?
Well, I don't know. Early on, we did say that Everton would finish in the, winning the Everton Cup and finish 7th. They had some quite easy matches early on. Leeds had 23 shots. 23. And Everton's defence is very poor without Luca Dean and Coleman, who couldn't play at the weekend. They haven't kept a clean sheet since opening day. And compare them to Leeds, where Leeds players are still the mid-level championship players that they were last season and the season before. To get promoted, their spend was the 7th highest in the championship. They didn't even spend the most to get there. This is about coaching by Bielsa, and also their technical director Areta, who finds the players for them, who's done a fantastic job. Everton, their problem the last 5 weeks has been the defence, and it will carry on being the defence. I still say they'll probably finish 7th.
As you say, I think I agree. Leeds probably haven't got an outstanding squad. Bamford, he had a few shots, of course, but he's not the player that is the answer to whatever the question is. But I think what it is that Bielsa is one of the best managers in that league. I think he's up there with the best.
Bielsa is and has been for 15 years one of the very best managers in the world, not just in the league. And he's shown it. He's done pretty much what Brian Clough did back in the 70s. He's taken these players that nobody else rates and turned them into a winning football team. And not just a winning football team, but a team that's playing really attractive attacking football.
All credit to him, because for any team to win away at Everton, any season is a good result to come away with. Everton aren't easy to beat, and they had that flying start. I think to come away with a 1-0 win and having leaked goals all season to get a clean sheet is a great result for Leeds.
I will crow a little now. I remember the look on the faces of all the other people in the Saturday sports show we do for Global Radio when I was the only one that said that Leeds would win, and I also put 1-0 on it, so there you are.
Yes, you did. Yeah, and everybody looked at you, really, because I think everybody saw that as being 2-2 or 3-2 or 2-3, and you were absolutely spot on with that one. West Brom against Sheffield United. Sheffield United have 1 point out of 10 games. If you're going to get beaten, you want to be beaten by Liverpool or Tottenham, not by West Brom, your fellow struggler. I mean, West Brom won at the weekend, Fulham won at the weekend, Brighton got a credible draw against Liverpool. Things are looking glum for Sheffield United.
If by glum you mean we're doomed, Mr. Mannering. Mr. Mannering, yes, you're quite right. I can't see any team recovering from that. No, certainly no team in history has recovered from a position anywhere near as bad as the one Sheffield United are in. I mean, injuries are a problem with them, and if you're one of the teams like them that doesn't have the strength in depth, yes, you can put a good first 11 on the pitch that will compete, and with a clever manager, which Wilder certainly is, and cause problems. But when you start getting injuries and you're putting your second choice players on, it's a different ball game, and I can't see Sheffield United surviving. The shock to me was Fulham actually winning a game. Well, no, actually, I take that back. The shock was they actually scored a penalty and then won the game.
Actually, you mentioned Chris Wilder, very good manager, Sheffield United manager. Jurgen Klopp kind of blamed him for the 12:30 kick-off and all the other things going on. He was being interviewed after that 1-1 draw with Brighton. He said, I don't know how often I have to say it, you picked the 12:30 kick-off. And yes, and he was talking about how not only is it difficult playing a European game and all that, and then having to play on a lunchtime kick-off, he said, that he thinks Chris Wilder was being very selfish because he was one of the people that voted against the 5 substitutes thing. So, well, Chris Wilder's having a bit of a rough time at the moment. What we're getting blamed by Klopp and losing constantly. 1 point out of 10.
Klopp should pick his targets a little bit better and pick the fights he's going to have much better. What did he think Chris Wilder should do? Chris Wilder's employed by Sheffield United, and he made a decision that, in his opinion, would help his football team. Did Klopp really think he should make any other decision? It's a bizarre thing to say. Klopp should pick his fights a little bit more carefully and not have a go at a manager who's quite simply doing his job.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And it's a little bit out of character for Klopp to be so fractious, edgy. Normally, he's, even when his team lose, in his post-match interview, he kind of smiles his way through it and is very charming, very European in his sort of nice, decent attitude. But he does sound like it's getting to him a little bit lately. We've heard it's not the first time he's complained and sort of been just that little bit angry, and maybe the pressure's getting to him.
I'm not sure. It's pressure. I think he was just very angry from the start that he was having to play the game at all, and then to have two goals disallowed, and then very, very late on Brighton come back to get the equaliser. He was just angry and sort of venting, if you like. I think, given 30 minutes to have a think about it, we'd have had a different interview.
This is the thing that we have all the time with these, and I think it was David on our radio show mentioned it, that you've got these people who've just played 90 minutes of football, and the manager who's been running up and down the touchline and not getting the result they wanted, on their way back to the dressing room afterwards with all the emotions running high, have a microphone stuck under their nose, and they're expected to say something without maybe making a fool of themselves or doing something or saying something that maybe they'd regret half an hour later.
It is very difficult, and it's probably more difficult for the players because they've got the adrenaline racing around them still, prompting them to give the question the thought that it deserved, because most of the questions are pretty stupid. You scored that goal, what did you feel? Oh, well, I felt terrible, obviously. Yeah. I mean, they're moronic questions, and they don't add anything to the experience. I don't understand why TV companies do it. Well, I do understand. It's all clickbait, isn't it? They want the player to make a mistake. They want the manager to say something stupid. And we go around the merry-go-round of press commenting on TV commenting on press, who comment on TV, who comment on press, and they drag it out for 3 or 4 days, which is exactly what we're doing now, come to think of it.
Oh, yeah. Don't give the game away. Yeah, I mean, you talk about, before we move on to the next game, talking there about players being asked to, how did you feel when you scored that goal? During the week in European competition, Harry Winks, of all people, scored an absolute, what they call worldie, from 55 yards out. It curled round the players, round the goalkeeper and over the top of the goalkeeper and hit the bar and went in. And it was a sensational goal, but you could tell by his face that something wasn't quite right. And when he was asked after the game, did you mean that? Did you mean to hit it like that? And he said, I wish I could say I did, but actually I was trying to pass it to Gareth Bale and it went in the goal. And Mourinho said, if it had been me, I would have kept my mouth shut and said, of course I meant it. And then won the Puskás Award for Best Goal of the Year. But I mean, Mourinho, I hope, was being tongue-in-cheek. I hope he wasn't angry with Harry Winks for admitting it. But good on him for admitting it, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the best example of the, talk me through the goal thing was Charlie George for the Wanderers against, I think it was either Leeds or Liverpool in the cup final, can't remember which one. And he said, well, talk us through the goal, Charlie. And he said, it come to me and I hit it and it went in. And once you've had that, I don't think any player could talk through the goal at all. Yeah, Harry Winks should have taken his lesson from Ronaldinho. If you remember that huge effort from Ronaldinho, half the planet thinks it was a cross and half think, and he's never commented on it. He just smiles. Yeah.
Well, good for Harry Winks, I suppose. But I mean, I think I might have been tempted to go. I've been practicing that in training all week. Right, let's move on. Sunday was an exciting afternoon of football. For me, being a Tottenham fan, of course, it was almost perfect day, really. But it all started off with Southampton going very, very quickly into a 2-0 lead at home to Man United. I was sat with David, our co-commentator on the Saturday Sports Show. His face, of course, was a picture of, here we go again. And Man United were pretty dreadful in the opening stages.
Yeah, they certainly were. You have to give credit to Southampton. They had a plan. They executed it extremely well. Were getting the reward they deserved, and then it all went a little bit wrong in the second half.
Yes, and again, I suppose credit to Man United coming back. When it got to 2-1, you kind of felt, well, they're not good enough here to win it, but they might just snatch a draw. But then up pops super sub Cavani and scores 2 absolutely world-class, I think, headers.
Yeah, which should shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Cavani's been a world-class striker for a number of years, and I do remember on the Saturday Sports Show being laughed at when I said a couple of seasons ago that Cavani was a world-class striker, and people who don't watch foreign football tended to think that. Anyone who did knew he was a world-class striker, and his legs might be going, and he's in his 30s, but his brain is still there. And you saw one of the goals he got, he made the run. There was a Manchester United player beside him who didn't make the run, but he saw where the only opportunity for a goal scoring attempt could be made from. So he went there and got, in inverted commas, lucky that the ball came to him. That's what strikers do.
Yes, I remember many years ago, I suppose I can say, England legend Gary Lineker, now TV presenter, being, I don't suppose, confronted with the statistic that he scored very few goals outside the box and was known as a goal hanger because, he didn't track back like maybe some players do these days. And he was, in the box waiting for a deflection or a pass gone wrong to come to him so he could tap it in and bundle it in by falling over and, knocking it in with the back of his head or something. And he said, but that's what I do. That's my job, is to score goals. If I'm not in the box, then how am I going to score them? And he said, yeah, I'm a goal hanger. That's what a striker does. You've just got to be, and your point about Cavani, I've got to find myself in the right position, either to strike it sweetly or for it to bounce off me and go in, and that is the end of that. But Cavani, 33 years old, I think his legs are probably going, but my point being, he doesn't really have to do a lot of running. He has to do what he is doing, and Lineker did, to be in the right place.
And this thing about Lineker being a goal hanger, it's as if it's some sort of excuse, as if what he's doing is easy. Now, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, but they're not, and it isn't easy at all. Players like him and Cavani, their brains are wired in a different way. They don't see the same picture that a midfielder sees when he receives the ball, or a defender sees when he sees the ball. They are thinking, and this isn't conscious, if there's going to be a goal-scoring opportunity, where is it going to come from? I need to be there. And they do it naturally, and it's a fantastic skill. And, Lineker, Gerd Müller, Jimmy Greaves, the highest goal scorers do this. Yeah,
and it's all about being in the right place. I do remember a piece of commentary, it's a bit like the commentary we have at the beginning of the show, but I remember a piece of commentary, Gascoigne and Lineker on the edge of the box, and Gascoigne has the ball and Lineker makes a darting run towards the keeper, and Gascoigne feints to pass it to him and then goes the other way round the player and scores. And the commentator says, Gascoigne to Lineker, oh no, he's used him by not using him. And Lineker's job there was to put off the defenders by being in the box.
Yeah, in that situation, it's a much more conscious decision by Lineker. I've got to take that defender away, and lots of players do that. But the ability to be in the place to get the tap in is, you can't teach that. You've got it or you haven't got it. And Cavani definitely has it.
Definitely, because he scored those 2 goals, but he also did what Lineker did, and that was distract the defenders. Lineker, in that move that I'm talking about, why Gascoigne used him by not using him, Lineker didn't touch the ball, but the team ended up with a goal because Lineker was in the box doing something. So Cavani was superb. The 2 headers were great, and were Man United lucky? Or did they deserve to come away with the 3 points?
I don't think they deserve 3 points. So I suppose, in a sense, they're a little bit lucky that they got them. But you take your chances, and then you win the game. And they took their chances, and there were some that Southampton left on the pitch. So you got to very reluctantly say they probably, Manchester United probably deserved it. I don't think it answered any questions at all regarding Solskjaer as a manager. They still haven't sorted Van der Beek out. Van der Beek looked very, very good, but they're still restricting how he plays, shouting and screaming at him to get back and don't go there and don't go here. These players out of Ajax, they're natural footballers. You've got to let them do what they do, otherwise don't buy them.
Yeah, he does seem to be almost singled out for special treatment, but in all the wrong ways. It's almost like he's been blamed for everything. It's like we say about Southgate not wanting to play Grealish and deliberately playing out of position, or just not playing him when it's quite obvious they need it. It's like you've got this talented, gifted young player, don't want him in the team, and I think Van der Beek is being misused when he is being used at all. Well, yeah, when he and Fernandes are playing together in midfield, they're much better, and they're a better team because Pogba's not there. I know he's injured, but he's still not there.
Yeah, that Manchester United squad has 3 world-class players in it: Van der Beek, Cavani and Fernandes, and they should be played all the time. They're the only 3 world-class players in that squad, which cost £1 billion, by the way.
Now, once again, I want to move on because we've still got a lot to talk about, but before we move on from Man United, once again, Roy Keane, ex-Man United player and, of course, kind of like, I suppose, the punditry equivalent of a shock jock, likes to give it and dish it out, but he was absolutely fuming with De Gea for both goals. But actually, the second one, Southampton goal, he was actually behind the goal, saving it when the ball had already crossed the line, and he did look out of sorts. He was replaced by Henderson as well, wasn't he? But not for tactical reasons.
Yeah, I mean, Henderson is a better goalkeeper than De Gea and has been for the last 2 seasons. And if you want to argue with me, then I'll just point you in the direction of all the stats, which prove it. De Gea has been one of the worst goalkeepers in the league in the last couple of years, and also for Spain as well, particularly in the last World Cup where he was absolutely dreadful. I suppose Manchester United have got to play him because they want to get money for him when they sell him.
Seems an awfully risky thing to do, but there we are, Man United. I suppose, yeah, maybe it's a sign of a good team. If you're 2-0 down, you don't despair and you carry on, you end up winning 3-2. The next game, and I know the expression you're going to use, but it was Chelsea 0, Tottenham 0. 1,000 games of owning the club for Abramovich, didn't come away with a win against his old manager. I said at the beginning, I think, of the game, I would definitely take a draw all day long. Away at Chelsea, who I think have probably got the best squad in the league, certainly one of the best 2 or 3 squads in the league, I was very, very delighted with the draw, and I expected it to be very cagey.
A Mourinho team came and parked the bus. Shock, horror. Who would have thought that could possibly happen? If Chelsea's forwards had taken their chances, then they'd have won. It would have been, on paper, a comfortable win, but they didn't. So, it turned out to be a draw. I think the big performance for me in the match was Kante, who snuffed out Harry Kane. Kane has caused all sorts of trouble by dropping off his striker position into a number 10 position into space, and typically playing in Son, and Kante snuffed him out completely. It was a wonderful performance by Kante. So that stopped Spurs' supply of goal-scoring attempts, and they only had 1 on target, I think, in the whole of the match. But what a wonderful performance. And if you get the chance to see the game again, just go and watch Kante. Every team he plays for is a different team when he plays as a holding midfielder, and his tackling, his distribution, his effort is just absolutely wonderful.
Yes, I mean, the big thing that Chelsea did, apart from, being a very fast attacking team, but the big thing they did was basically they snuffed out, as you say, Kane and Son, who had, not a great afternoon by their standards. And once you've snuffed that out, the counter-attack, which was, I think, probably our tactic, was not going to happen. So a draw was probably the right thing in the end. As a Tottenham fan, I'm happy with that, to come away with a draw. But what made me nearly as happy was a little later on, the 2 lowest scoring teams in the league, Wolves and Arsenal. Arsenal were at home and lost 2-1 to Wolverhampton Wanderers. 2 Wanderers there, the Woolwich Wanderers and the Wolverhampton Wanderers, but Wolves getting all the 3 points at the Emirates. It's now official, whatever you say, people are saying, Areta has changed them for the better, but Arsenal now, after 10 games, have officially had their worst start to a league season since 1981. 1981. This is the worst start to a season they've had. They're 14th in the league.
Yeah, when the groundsman took over, all his acolytes and sycophants in the press were building him up to be the next greatest thing, despite there being absolutely no evidence to support it whatsoever. We've now had a year, and now his excuses are changing to it's a work in progress. But work in progress doesn't last a year. It's when are we going to see the results of this work in progress then? Because the only thing that I have seen is an increase in sort of the intangibles, the things you can't really measure. They look to be a bit more motivated. They look to be a little bit better defensively. Well, yes, so what? They've spent an awful lot of money under him since he went there. A lot of money. The problem, of course, is that money has gone on players who are 32 years old or older, so they're not going to be there when the work in progress finishes. They're going to be 34 and 35. How many years does this work in progress last? Because for Manchester United, it's been 7 so far, and they're still not there. The managers that Manchester United hired after Lord Fergie left are significantly better than the groundsman. So no, I think they have a huge problem. There were some people in the press in the last few days saying, "Oh well, what he's got to do is just put all the youngsters in, put Bukayo Saka and Reece Nelson and Joe Willock." Well, if that's the answer, if the answer is throw the youngsters on the pitch and they sink or swim, then you really are saying that Arteta is, well, he's an empty suit, let's be honest. There is no progress there. Until they scored in that last match, 506 minutes between the two times that they'd scored from open play in the league. It's shocking.
Yeah, I mean, before that game, Ian Wright, ex-Arsenal player, of course, Ian Wright was saying that he was very worried that Saka was being played all this time at the age of 19, playing every single game, and that they're relying on him. And he said, if you're relying on a 19-year-old with so little experience to pull you through every game, there's something seriously wrong with your team. And we've got, or had, Ozil, who plays in that sort of position, without a squad number. There is something badly wrong at Arsenal. Now, Tottenham are top of the league, and that's not going to stay like that, I understand. And Arsenal are 14th, so I'm very, very happy. Both Mourinho and Arteta both been at the clubs for a year. More or less they've got the jobs at the same time. I know you're not a fan of Mourinho, but he has made a difference at Tottenham, and Arsenal haven't. And I don't think Arsenal at Tottenham have got the better squad, in the sense that they've spent so much more. I just think Mourinho's done a lot better.
Well, Mourinho took the job with a body of work and achievement behind him. I mean, I don't like how his teams set about achieving it. I don't like this park the bus and play on the break, but that's what he does. And the man who hired him knew that's what he did. Mourinho has done what Mourinho does. The problem with the groundsman at the Wanderers is they invested in this person who had no track record at all. So what sort of manager is he going to be? If you're the owner or the representatives of the owners of the Wanderers, surely there should be some plan, shouldn't there? There should be a desire to be playing in the Champions League. Following on from the desire, there should be a plan to enable that to happen. Not pick the guy who puts the cones out at Manchester City and hope. Just that's it. Hope, and let his mates in the press build him up. When there is nothing behind it at all, and we're seeing that a year on. His performance in the Premier League in that year is worse than Unai Emery in his first year. Is worse. Yeah,
a lot worse. And as I said, it's 1981 was the last time they had a bad start like this. It is their worst start in nearly 40 years. Absolutely shocking. But like him or not, when Mourinho was probably interviewed by Levy for the job, he could turn to a body of work and say, "There is my CV." And then when he's being a manager and doing the job, and something bad, goes wrong, or the players are unmotivated, or they keep letting in goals on the right hand side, he can think to himself, "What did I do 5 years ago when I had this similar problem? Oh, this and this." Arteta hasn't got anything to look back on. He can't, in the interview, say, "Well, in my experience," because he doesn't have it. So when you are struggling, you can't say, "What did I do last season or 10 years ago, or what did I learn 5 years ago to get me out of this situation?" There's no backstory. There's no catalogue of tactics to go through.
No, it was a terrible appointment, which quite a lot of people said at the time, and every match confirms that. Just take the Wanderers against, I think it was the Leeds match, was it? Against Leeds, they had 2 shots on target in a game of 34 shots against a team promoted from the Championship, and their total of nine shots in that match was a third of the Leeds tally. Now, if you put all of the Arsenal players down on the list, and beside them you put all the Leeds players who are mid-level Championship quality players, Arsenal's players are much, much better. What's the difference between the two sides? The difference between the two sides is the manager. One knows pretty much everything. If there's anything in football worth knowing that Bielsa doesn't know, then, well, I don't know what it is. He knows everything. And he has disciples. Arteta supposedly one of them. Yet he can't organise a football team. Yeah,
don't be fooled. Managers do have a bigger influence. Aubameyang in that game against Wolves had 8 touches in the entire first half, 3 of them from kicking off, 1 at the start of the game and 2 from the goals that Wolves scored. Before we move on to your team, West Ham, who won, of course, yesterday, let's just have a little chat about what happened to Jimenez. An accidental clash of heads with David Luiz. I don't think anybody was to blame. Jimenez was rushed to hospital. He's had an operation and is now staying in hospital under observation. They say the operation was a success, etc. But that's quite serious.
Well, it's extremely serious. Head injuries are life-threatening, either immediately, quite soon afterwards, or in subsequent years. And I find the response of the Premier League and also a lot of people in the press to be quite extraordinary. The Premier League talking officially about holding a trial. A trial? What the hell do we need a trial for? Just the chairman of the Premier League has to pick up the telephone, phone Mike Riley, head of the referees, and say, right, from now on, they can substitute a player who's had a head injury, who has to go off and go through a head injury protocol. Now, how long did that take? 10 seconds? Yeah. What the hell do you need a trial for? Rugby's been doing this for 10 years. American football's been doing it for 5 years. Ice hockey's been doing it for 10 years. There are ways of doing this that are already tried, and we've already seen the results. Now, in rugby, at the start of the season, before they play a game, every player goes through concussion protocol. They ask all the questions, do all the tests, they record them, and those go with the player, with the squad to every match. If a player gets a head injury, he must go off immediately. There's no choice. The referee says, right, you're off, and they replace him immediately with a head injury replacement. He then goes through the protocol, all the tests, which take about 10 minutes, and if the doctor, who's independent of both clubs, if the doctor says, no, you can't play on, he doesn't play on. Now, why can the Premier League not introduce that? They could do it for the next match and from there onwards. And if IFAB or UEFA or FIFA say, oh no, it's got to be, in concert with everyone else, then just tell them to F off. The health of the players is much more important. And this change can be made for the next match easily. There is no reason why it can't be done. Yeah,
all the managers are for it. None of the actual professionals who have to play the game and have to try and win games are against this, because it's a matter of life and death, health and so on. A concussion is a serious thing, and people like Klopp are quite in favour of it. It could, as you say, they could bring it in for Saturday. I'm not sure how it would work. Like in rugby, you bring on a concussion sub who then gets subbed back off again if the player who went off is all right. So it's just like a temporary replacement for 10 minutes to run around while you're off the pitch having a test. I think it would change the game a little bit, and I think maybe that's why people are a little bit wary of it. But I'd be a lot more wary of having brain damage.
Well, yeah, we saw the absolutely disgraceful situation of David Luiz playing on. He's quite clearly had a very bad head injury. You could tell from the blood, if nothing else. And because he answered the questions correctly, he was allowed to play on. That's absolutely disgraceful. And that doctor should be struck off. He should be fired and struck off for allowing David Luiz to get back on the pitch. This isn't about sport, but Liam Neeson, the actor, his wife died from a concussion, from a head injury. That they were skiing. She hit a tree, which people do when they're skiing. She was dazed, and she got up and said she was okay. Went down to the bottom. 25 minutes later, she died. In horse racing, they have a protocol. If the jockey falls, he goes through the concussion protocol, asks the questions. This takes about 10 minutes, but they then wait another 25 minutes and do another test to see if the responses are the same. So in rugby, you're comparing the responses after the head injury to the responses at the start of the season, seeing if there's a difference. If there is a difference, he doesn't play. Horse racing, they do it, but they add the second test in 25 minutes, and had they done that with David Luiz, they would have known that he couldn't carry on, because it was only at half time that he started to feel really bad again. You don't play around with head injuries. It's an absolute nonsense. The brain is like a muscle. It bruises, and unlike most other muscles, it is surrounded by bone. There is nowhere for it to go as it swells up, and that's the problem. It bruises, it swells up, and the only place for it to go is downwards, where it can crush the brainstem. You don't mess about with head injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody agrees with that. All right, then let's move on then, because that is a very serious subject, and I think they need to change the law and allow those tests to go ahead, because, yeah, of course, it takes a while for the damage to be noticeable, I suppose. Yesterday, because we're recording this on a Tuesday, two very interesting results. Leicester, again, like last season, up there in the top four, losing at home to Fulham, who've now won 2 games, I think. They got a penalty, which they seem to do in every game, but they actually scored this one. Leicester won, and that one came from a late Harvey Barnes goal. They were 2-0 down until about 4 minutes to go. What's happened with Fulham? Scott Parker must be scratching his head.
Well, I think he's scratching his head, because I certainly didn't think they'd win 2 games all season. We're back into classic old football here, aren't we? Now they can see a glimmer of hope, and it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be getting too excited. Fulham or West Brom fans, I don't think. Both getting victories, which, as we said at the beginning of the show, made it all the worse for poor old Sheffield United, who last season we were talking about going into Europe. West Ham West Ham beat Aston Villa, who are a very exciting team to watch, and not least because they've got Jack Grealish, who scored. But West Ham beat Aston Villa, deservedly so, Geoff, because it wasn't a great game for West Ham. I mean, they had a lot less shots, I think, than Villa.
No, it wasn't, and people who know me know I prefer the performance than the result. And, okay, we got the result, but I think, speaking honestly, Villa deserved the victory. Certainly a draw would have been, a reasonable result. I don't think West Ham deserved to win, but we got the 3 points, and there are many, many occasions where we've deserved to win and got nothing, so you just got to take it. But I'm still worried about Moyes because, he's not putting the best team on the pitch, therefore they're not playing as well as they can. What he's doing is not sustainable. I posted that West Ham will get altitude sickness being as high as 5th, and it is going to happen, because until we can put Haller and Antonio on the pitch together, get Lanzini just behind them, we're not going to scare opponents. This David Moyes efficiency method is all very well, but it's not the West Ham way.
Yeah, even Declan Rice was interviewed afterwards and said, because Villa had a goal disallowed for offside, and the reason apparently was the upper part of his arm was offside, and Declan Rice said, it's really tough for me, that's a tough decision. Is it onside, is it offside? It was the upper part of his arm. These things sometimes go against us. Today it's gone in our favour, but he thought it was very harsh. I mean, you can be magnanimous when you've won a game, I suppose, but that was very harsh on Aston Villa, and it took them 4 minutes to decide that it was offside, which is why you had a nerve-biting sort of 5 minutes added on at the end. But if it takes 4 minutes, then if they can't decide, then I don't think it probably affected the play to give them an advantage unfairly, did it?
No, that's exactly right. And if we're going to continue with this VAR thing, we need a 20-second rule. If they can't overrule the referee in 20 seconds, then it stays as it is on the pitch. Because if it takes more than that, then it's clearly not a clear and obvious error. They've got to change the handball law, get it back to what it was before. It's got to be hand to ball and intent, and change the offside law. Just say there's got to be daylight between the attacker and the defender. If there's no daylight, then he's onside. Leave it at that.
There was a game, of course, as well last week that we haven't mentioned yet, but Crystal Palace, as we said, have played sort of 2 games Monday and Friday. They were beaten at home by Newcastle, of all people. Yeah,
a very surprising result. What surprised me even more than the result was Roy Hodgson's interviews afterwards, where unusually for him, he's singling out a player, Zaha, and asking questions, pointed questions at the rest of his squad, which is a very un-Hodgson-like thing to do. He's always been very much a team man, and I think that behind his thinking was, okay, we've got to wind these guys up and get them to perform. They've picked up 6 points from a possible 51 when Zaha doesn't play. 6 from 51. So his comments might be justified. I'd question whether he should be making them publicly or not, or keep it inside the dressing room. And this is his quote: "I would be very frustrated with this, the 6 from 51, if I was one of the other outfield players, to have it told to me all the time that the only way you ever win a game is if Wilf plays. But unfortunately, we can't deny the fact. Somewhere along the line, we're going to have to learn to accept that he isn't going to be able to get us out of a hole every game." I don't think that helps Zaha going into the dressing room the following day for training. The other players will be pissed off. And however true it is, and the fact is 6 points from 51 without him doesn't, I think, help the team. It's a very un-Hodgson-like thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on Zaha to perform and a lot of expectation, but also he's a bit of a teacher's pet now. The other team members go, "Oh yeah, it's all you, isn't it, Wilf?" But that is quite unlike Hodgson. Maybe the pressure's showing, or maybe, I mean, he's an experienced manager. Maybe it's a tactic he's using to G the players up and maybe rinse them out in public, call them out. Maybe it's some sort of tactic he thinks might work. But if you've got to admit that you've only got one player that can win a game for you, they're in trouble. I think Palace. I think they could have a tough season ahead. So they played on a Monday and Friday. Aston Villa played yesterday, Monday. Guess who's playing first game on Friday? Aston Villa. They played yesterday, Monday. They're playing Friday, 3 days away. Aston Villa against Newcastle, as it happens.
I just don't understand with that. Just draw lots and have a rotation so everybody knows, and then if it throws up a match like this where 2 teams are going to play 5 days apart, change it. The Premier League has handed the responsibility for this over to the TV companies, and that's just wrong. Even if it means you lose 10 million off the deal, you've got to be in control of your sport, and the Premier League have abdicated delegated control to the TV companies, and the TV companies answer to their shareholders. They have to get the biggest possible TV audience because the advertising revenue depends on the audience figures. If the audience figures aren't as high as the TV company said, then they have to compensate the advertisers. It's putting the cart before the horse. And the score, 2-2.
Yeah, I think it'll be a draw. That's the unattractive game that you were talking about, Villa against Newcastle. Probably not a lot of people want to watch that. Bang it on a Friday. Doesn't matter if one of the teams played earlier that day. Seems to be the thinking. Saturday, Burnley against Everton. Not a game anybody wants to watch, I don't think. But surely Everton will win that.
Well, Everton are getting into the position where they've got to start winning, haven't they? So there's more pressure on them, and Burnley definitely have to start winning. What are the problems in the teams? Burnley's problem is they can't score, and Everton's problem is they can't defend. So kind of got 0-0 written all over it, hasn't it? I'll go for 0-0.
And then one that definitely won't be 0-0. Well, it'd be 0 for one side. Man City against Fulham.
Yeah, City have got to be looking at another 5-0, so I'll go for that.
Yeah, I'll say 4, but it will be 4 or 5-0, yeah, probably. And then, here's a test for you. West Ham United against Manchester United. Having said that, it's only Manchester United.
2-1 to Manchester United.
Yeah, you probably are going to get beaten. I wonder if West Ham have got a little bit tougher having an empty stadium, because that London stadium is cavernous. And I think probably it's even a more lonely place than a lot of the other stadiums. But nevertheless, yeah, West Ham at home probably going to get beaten by Man United, depending on which Man United turn up. Chelsea against Leeds is the late game on Saturday. That should be a ferocious game.
Yeah, that could be quite something. A 3-2 Chelsea win.
Yep, all right, Chelsea probably to win that. On Sunday, West Brom against Crystal Palace. Another game that doesn't really excite me, to be honest, but I think that probably is a draw.
I'll go Palace to win 2-1.
I mean, if Zaha's played, then yes, but if he's not, then no. Sheffield United against Leicester, chance for Leicester to win again, having been beaten unexpectedly this week.
Yeah, I think they'll bounce back from that, probably 2-0.
Which would be, just puts Sheffield really lower and lower. I mean, they might as well start in the Championship now, save a bit of time. Tottenham against Arsenal now, a little bit earlier in the show, I did find myself on the verge, on the cusp of gloating about Tottenham being first in the league and Arsenal being 14th, and I don't know if I mentioned it, their worst start for 39 years, but this is probably, knowing my luck, this will probably be the game that Arsenal turn things round.
It might be. Tottenham don't attack, they counter-attack. Arsenal's defence is a little bit better than it was last year. I don't know. No, I'll go for a 2-0 win for Spurs.
Oh, 2-0. I hope you're right. But I think it's going to be closer than that. If Tottenham sense blood and they feel that Arsenal aren't up to the task, I think they might win 2 or 3-0. But I think Arsenal will be a bit better than they were the other day. Liverpool against Wolves. Wolves, as we said, one of the lowest scoring teams along with Arsenal in the league. Liverpool been a little bit off the boil lately.
Yes, but they should still have more than enough for Wolves. I mean, Wolves have, throughout the season, apart from the last match, started very, very slowly. Their goals come at the ends of the match, not at the start of the match. I think Liverpool might be out of sight by then, so 2-0, possibly 2-1. I'll go 2-0 to Liverpool. All
right, that's Liverpool to beat Wolves. And then Brighton against Southampton, which brings us all the way back to this time next week almost.
There are more goals in Southampton than there are in Brighton. It might be a very attractive game to watch, actually, as a football match. I'll say 3-1 to Southampton.
That's all we've got time for, but before we say our goodbyes, your trivia question and the answer.
Okay, the question was that in January 1986, Mark Hateley and Ray Wilkins played together for England. Why was that a first? Well, it was the first time 2 teammates from a foreign club had represented England together. They both played for Milan. And a very similar thing happened 3 weeks ago when Jude Bellingham and Jadon Sancho, who both play for Borussia Dortmund, played for England in the same team.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I don't think it's happened those 2 times. It's obviously something that doesn't happen a lot. That was the first time. But most England players are based in England. Maybe that's why England don't do so well.
There is that, although during the 90s it happened a lot with all those English players who played for Glasgow Rangers. Which we should remember is a foreign club.
Yeah, good point. All right, that is all we've got time for. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
And that was Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.